All right, well, welcome everyone. We are going to get started this evening. Again, Melissa will not be with us this evening, and Donna is going to be a few minutes late. So we are going to get started. I'm going to turn over this first topic to Abe for a little background, and then we'll turn it over to Mike, and Mike. So Abe, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate everybody's time today. Welcome back. Hope everybody enjoyed their long vacation. And I want to thank the members of the Convention Center Authority for being with us today. They are presenting to ask council for an expedited appropriation for the request that they made earlier this year. And we had an original meeting on the 24th of August, where they asked for consideration of $1.25 million for ice equipment, seeing that their season officially begins on October the 23rd, and we wish them the best of luck with that, with the Royals. And on Thursday, they came back and asked if you would consider the $3 million all upfront rather than in a lump sum, which I thought was a reasonable request. That way we didn't have to go through this procedure twice. And so I relayed the information to you that same day and asked them to be prepared to present to you today in terms of what the appropriation is going to be used for specifically, and to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Just so you know, the mayor is in favor of this. He feels that they could use the money right away in order to prepare for the season, and that the need is definitely there. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Mike Gombar, who will be presenting. And of course, you have other members from the authority as well. So Mike, I'll just turn it over to you.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Abe. And thank you for that explanation. And as mentioned, Mike Ehlerman and Mike Futzi are also here with me. Admittedly, I think part of our request was just not understanding the process initially. So, when we were before you a few weeks ago and the $3 million appropriation or payment was approved, we kind of thought that, the money was en route, basically. And then we had conversations with the administration, and we were informed that the process required a formal ordinance from council to approve the appropriation. And as Abe mentioned, as we sit here today, we did make a commitment on the replacement of the ice plant, which is sorely needed, probably on borrowed time at this point on it. And that's where the 1.2 million amount comes in that Abe had mentioned. But as we were talking about it and thinking about it, we were of the opinion that it may make more sense if we would get this all done in one fall swoop and get the full appropriation of the $3 million that was approved several weeks ago, taken care of through this ordinance, so that we did not have to come back to you again in the future and go through a whole nother ordinance process that would, potentially set us back 20, 30 days, depending on how the timing fell. And honestly, it was just nothing more than just an efficiency point of view on it. Understanding that, you're going to want some sort of accountability for this money at the end of the day, we'd be more than happy to, share reports, invoices, whatever, you would want to confirm how the money, is being spent as we move forward in the next few weeks and months. But, with that, we were just looking to basically get council's approval for the full appropriation now. I don't know if Mike, if you have anything else to add to that.
I think one thing that we should make clear, Mr. Gombar, is that we have a plan, and the part that we're working on right now is primarily CapEx. That was something that we had a discussion on previously in the COW. And in addition to the portion that we spoke to Abe with, the 1.2 rough for the ice plant, we had a series of enhancements that were a little over $1.4 million that we felt were appropriate for improving the facility. And there are a series of things in that. Some of it's sound systems, some of it's the lighting, some of it our signage, some of it is a little fancy, but it's sort of state of the art. And we're prepared to go forward with a lot of that in the near future if the funds are available. And that's why we had this discussion, Mike and I had after a very brief one with Abe. So it's really up to you. It seems if in fact the feeling of council is that a $3 million is an appropriate amount, we would like to work within that. We don't have to have dollar for dollar in the front end. I'm not saying that. But it would seem to me that if we used Abe as the gatekeeper, if you will, as we proceed, and as well as keeping council fully informed, I think that would save a lot of time to stress on going after individual pieces of this time and again. So those are my only comments.
All right, well, thank you, Abe, Mike, and Mike. Council, any comments or questions at this point? I don't foresee this being an issue, just from my perspective. We would just need to piece together where we pull it from, Abe. And as it relates to any ARP access, I'm sure, that we dot the I's and T's appropriately if we need them properly.
Yeah.
It's already been committed to.
Right.
It's just a matter of plugging it from where, so I'll open it up to other council members for questions or comments.
And before we do that, I just want to clarify that this would be strictly out of American Rescue Plan dollars, not general fund, not capital improvements. I just want to be clear about that up front.
All right, you guys already worked that through. Okay, great. Comments, Lucine, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I think that as long as it's vetted, through ARP, it actually makes sense and is atypical for the way that the government route usually takes in terms of expediting and making things easier. So good on that. We look to doing that a better job with our community partners in those efforts. And I think that although it sounds like, Mike, I think you said state of the art, but in your industry and with what we have as a gem in our downtown, I think, in my opinion, is critical to have that, to have this sound systems, to have what people are expecting, or maybe even traveling to different cities beyond Reading to attain when they're going for entertainment and watching their sports. So, again, I think this is good insight as to what we need to do and how maybe we could do it a little more efficiently. So thank you for bringing that to us.
All right, additional comments?
I have a question.
Yep.
Or maybe clarity. So the original ask was 1.5. Was that the original ask?
3 million, Johanny.
So the total ask is 3 million, but we approved an amount prior, did we not?
No,
Yeah.
no. Council did not approve an amount to be appropriated. It passed a resolution approving $3 million for the convention center, but there was no formal mechanism via legislation to actually appropriate the money. That's why the Convention Center Authority is coming to you this evening.
Got it. Okay. I just needed some clarity. And then I'm just curious, is the county also providing any funding for the upgrades to the facility?
We have not gone there yet. We will in the very immediate future. But we have not, to be very candid. I think one of the biggest reasons, Johanny, was that there had been interest shown earlier on in terms of the ice plant, because we've known that for 2 years. Secondarily, in the cow, I don't know, this was probably a month ago, month and a half ago, I indicated a desire to use the bulk of these funds coming from the city toward CapEx. And the base reason for that is that it allows us to continue to make other expense payments that we have gotten into a little trouble with. PNC, which is our bank, delayed 2 principal payments totaling $1.3 million. We begin repaying that January 1 of 22. So to the degree we have funds available from another source toward CapEx, it makes it much easier to meet those principal requirements because that has to be repaid within 3 years. So my desire was to keep it in the CapEx arena.
But just to clarify to Johanny's question, the county did also commit $3 million as well too. We just are in the same process with obtaining those funds or getting those funds earmarked as we are with you right now too. So that has been approved, the 3 million from the county at least.
Mhm.
Sure, yes.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. And gentlemen, just a quick plug, or not a plug, but maybe a request for the future for something to be considered on the ice, public ice skating, maybe ice skating for our community, using the facility, during downtime, just putting it out there for future use. It's something I would love for you guys to consider because that's another outlet for the community and, obviously for a fee.
Sure. That can be arranged.
I can follow up on that, Johanny. We have a lot of open skating after Royals games. We have
Right.
open skating for people after the Royals games. We also have ice available for Alvernia for the girls and boys ice hockey teams. I know that because my son played there many times. And so they use that for a lot of their home games. I know they have some if you use Body Zone also. So we do offer it to the college, and we have a lot of open skates after Royals games.
Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
All right, any additional questions or comments, council? Go ahead, Marcia.
First of all, I just want to say to Johanny, I'm so glad you're so passionate about ice skating. I want to see you out on the ice sometime once this happens, but I want to thank, because I know that the arena, I have seen the skating after the Royals games, and it's been great to be able to see those young people so much looking forward to make use of the ice. So there's been all different ways that the convention center, the arena have really made use of some good outreach to the public. Years ago, we had New Year's Eve celebrations there. So there's a lot of possibilities. I like the approach that we're using here because I think it's very open. It's taking it step by step incrementally. I'm glad to see that the county is being approached in the same way and that we need to do what we need to do, due diligence. I also believe it's important when you look at this funding to be able to get your major needs addressed up front. Okay, so we don't have to keep revisiting things. That we've made the decisions and committed this money to what priorities are. And obviously, the convention center, the arena, everything. And I just want to put a plug in, though. I know you're focusing on the arena. I want to put in a plug for the Performing Arts Center, because I know that's in dire need of some repairs. That somehow or another, we need to come back and look at where that might fall in the whole picture, too.
Mr. Gombar, you want to address that one? Particularly the latter on SPAC?
Sure. Yeah. And I agree with everything you said, Marcia. The arena has been getting a lot of the attention lately. And I think to Lucine's point, a lot of that is because we're trying to keep up with our competition that's around us, so we can continue to get those top events and those top acts to come here instead of Allentown or Hershey. But we do have significant plans for upgrades and improvements at SPAC as well too. we're looking as part of those upgrades to not only expand the event experience, but also to expand the opportunities for community events at SPAC as well too. So, there's in our opinion, some good opportunity to host some community type of events utilizing, food services and catering there as well too. So that's part of our plan on upgrades there as well too. I apologize, I don't have the full list of our plans in front of me as I sit here today, though. I don't know, Mike, you might have a better memory than I do.
I think several things. We've done a lot of painting in there for the opening this fall. We have immediate plans to do carpeting, both in the entry as well as the side aisles and the second deck, because that's pretty well worn. Yes, we clean it every year, but it's time for a replacement, and that will be done almost immediately.
Yeah, and the reason I mentioned that, as the discussion was about us being competitive, when you really look at that Performing Arts Center or in New York theaters, it has the same qualities. It has the acoustics much better than other places outside the city, which I won't name, but we have a lot of advantages there. And as we revitalize our downtown, I'm so glad you folks are going to be keeping that on the radar screen.
One of the things that was done maybe 3, possibly as much as 4 years ago, was a complete new sound system in there.
Right, exactly.
And that has paid dividends, no question.
Yeah, the sound's amazing. And I can tell you where the best seats are for sound, but that's another conversation.
Okay.
You don't want to give out your secret on where to sit.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it possible to share those plans with us?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We,
All right.
Mike,
Any additional comments or questions?
Jeff, I just want to follow up quick with Lucine and what Marcia said. When we were talking about some of the CapEx, we're also taking advantage of some new green energies. Our ice plant's going to go away from Freon. We're going to CO2 there, and the lighting's going to be upgraded LED. So, we're going to be using some green energies moving forward there. So to be a lot more efficient at the ice plant and with the lighting.
Council President, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, go ahead, Jamar.
Mike, are you going to be working on the ordinance to get to Linda by noon tomorrow? And will there be time for me to review it to make sure the language covers everything from the accounting end of things?
I think that's addressed to Gombar, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Mr. Ehlerman, that was for Mike Gombar. Sorry.
I mean, I'll provide you with whatever information you need to complete the ordinance. I don't know if that's, if you want me to work with Linda or however to get that done, that's fine.
Yeah, we can ask Linda to work with Abe and Jamar to get a draft. We'll get it over to you, Mike. I don't think Mike was prepared to do an ordinance. Linda, and certainly by 12 tomorrow. I mean, that's throwing a lot out there. So let us work on when we know we want to put it on the agenda for Monday. So it has a 2-week layover, and we can vote on it in 2 weeks out. All right. So we'll get the wording figured out. I want to make sure there's any necessary ARP wording in there, Jamar and Abe, that we need as well. So we'll figure that piece out. Then we'll bounce it off of you, Mike.
That sounds like a plan.
All right. Well, appreciate your time, Mike, and Mike. And we look forward to getting this process done and allow you guys to move forward with your very busy schedule. So again, we appreciate the ongoing efforts, and we're always here to support you whatever way we can. So thank you. Thank you, Abe and Jamar, for walking this through as well.
Thank you, everyone. We certainly appreciate your attention and help.
All right, be safe, everybody.
Thank you very much, Council.
Thanks to you and the mayor as well, too.
Thank you. Okay, the only other item on our agenda this evening is an update on the ARP funding. I don't know who's prepared to step through these three topics.
Sure.
The lost revenue report, I know, turn over to Abe. Go ahead, Abe.
Sure. Before I turn it over to Jamal, he's going to walk us through the lost revenue report. I just want to give everybody an update as to where we stand right now. The RFQs went out to all 4 consultants. We're going to expect to hear back from them by the end of this month. And then we will be able to come back in October again. I've noticed that we're having these meetings at the first Monday of the month, which is fine. It works out really well. So we'll have some more in terms of a timeline. We are looking at the 3rd week of October in terms of taking this to the public as well to get their comments and their inputs. And I've gotten 3 dates from the mayor's office. Ideally, I'd like to do it in 2 places in the city to give folks an opportunity to participate and speak on what they think is appropriate. And prior to that, we'll also publicize the list of the requests that we received internally. We met again internally last week to deliberate on the next steps. So we will stay on top of this, and we'll have more of an update for you by the end of this month, early October. And what I'll do now is I'll just turn it over to Jamar. He's going to talk about the lost revenue report, and I want to commend him on his persistence. As you can imagine, there were tons of submissions to the Department of Treasury's website, and he finally got through. It was finally filed. I know he lost some sleep over it, so I want to commend Jamar for his Herculean effort to make sure that this was done in a timely fashion. So I'll turn it over to Jamar, and then I'm sure that both of us will be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Abe. So under the advice of Act 47 and Gordon and BJ, we're going to pursue the revenue allocation approach to the American Rescue Plan funds. Of the 3 categories, the revenue allocation approach provides the most flexibility in terms of the use of funds for whatever it is the city and city council deem necessary. That approach is going to allow pretty much about 98% of the funding to be used in an all of the above approach. Gordon has offered to come and do a formal presentation to council during the next committee of the whole, if that is your desire. Under funding for 2020, which the interim report that we just filed is period of coverage, it's on or about $12 million in revenue that we will be able to use as early as this year. Also, a bit of context to add to the previous conversation, a reminder that we did receive the first tranche of 30 million back in June. So with the appropriation ordinance, we would be able to make we would be able to cut rather that check to the Convention Centers Bureau once council passes that.
It was Wednesday, June 9th, to be exact, folks.
If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I have a question. Did we also, the First Energy Stadium, did we release 3 million to them as well from this funding?
No, we did not receive a formal request. So no, the answer to that is no.
Yeah, nothing has been released to anyone, Councilor.
Right.
Those were resolutions that committed council support. They did not create a funding mechanism, as Abe explained earlier.
Right, and we're going to do everything before council for approval.
Okay, Lucine and Marcia, I don't know who was first.
Marcia can go first. That partially answered my question.
Yeah, and mine is a process question, because it seems like on a number of occasions I've heard the same question or similar questions about how the process works. If we could put that in writing, either through a flow chart or whatever, so people understand there's a difference between a resolution where the ordinance is actually the funding mechanism, and so that we look at timelines. So we have a sense of when we will be decision-making around this and the process that it involves. And it's just a matter of making it more formal so the public also knows that it's not a matter of coming to one person and asking for money. It's a part of a bigger process for it to be allocated.
It's an excellent point, Counselor, and I'm sure that we can also do that in the public meetings as well to explain specifically what the process is.
Lucy?
Yeah, in addition to that process that Marcia is describing, I think, when you publicize the list of all of the projects, I guess, that were presented or, put in front of, for consideration, it'll be critical for everybody to see that and also understand, did they follow, the appropriate protocol, that we were all sharing. And also, I think, we understand now better, 98% of, I think that was your number of what's coming out, through ARP. But I think that there might be, and this is just, my understanding at a base level, some of those projects that may not come out of ARP. And if then we would
Right.
consider those, where would those come from? Because from what I had been hearing was just a lot of fear of, if it doesn't fall into that bucket, then it's not going to be considered or it won't be addressed or funded. And I want to be very clear on explaining that to the public as to how that can move
Right.
forward.
Good point.
So there will be reporting requirements even under the revenue allocation, which is what I was just explaining that we're seeking, which does create the most flexibility to do a lot of those, I think, community-based projects that you're referring to. I think the process you're alluding to, we have to put more bones to. There's no mistake about that. But what I also advise council during the summertime is that we run it along with the budget process, which
Right.
We are in line with. So we have internal projects that we're including in the budget process. And then through members of council, you would bring it to the administration to include in the budget process as well. And the list of projects that you're referring to will be in the Excel spreadsheet that we all go through meticulously once we open up the budget process for review.
Yes.
Thanks, Jamar. That's right. And Abe, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but good point on that, Jamar. I've presented my list. I hope other counselors have done that. I know that I went through with Abe. I want to make sure that then Abe and you and everybody in the budget process is dropping it on, and that it gets from point A to C, so that we are then sitting in front of and reviewing what was communicated. And again, to all my fellow counselors, I hope they've taken that opportunity as well over these past couple of weeks and months to get in alignment and to meet and discuss from their perspective what's critical.
Yeah, and as you do that, share that with the other body members so we're aware of what's been submitted. I want to make sure you're not only for ARP money, but for capital expenses as well.
Certainly, we can do that.
Yeah, okay. Any additional questions for Jamar and Abe relevant to this topic?
Yes, I have one. And Lucine, thank you for mentioning that, because I don't have a list. I didn't know that. I thought there will be, what I anticipating happening, or what I was expecting, was a plan to be presented in terms of how money would be allocated per category based on our needs. I wasn't sure that we had, I didn't know that per district we were to submit a list of needs. I thought it would be presented to us, and then we would go item by item.
Yeah, a little bit of both. Johanny, I did mention to everyone before that they should submit ideas to the administration, but to also make sure you copy the body so we all understand what's going on. And then when we do get a final list, the body as a whole with the administration can make adjustments where we feel is necessary. Because at the end of the day, these projects need to be approved by council as well. So it's going to be a little bit of give and take. I don't think a whole lot. I think most of what the administration is working through is being pretty well thought out. But there may be things we want to add or change. It's like things. Go ahead, Marcia.
Yeah, and just a clarification on the process, because some items have been discussed that are within each of our districts, but do we again put them down on the list even though the administration may have discussed them, or is it good for us to be able to advocate with them at the same time we know the administration might be considering them?
Well, the
Well, I
more
think
input,
it's
the
im-
better.
Yeah, I think
Really.
it's important everyone submits all ideas, thoughts, concerns,
Okay,
needs, so that they have a comprehensive list. And I don't want us to get to the end of this process and then council suddenly say, hey, we have 15 things we'd like to talk about. Everybody should be submitting things, but again, copying everybody so we all know what's being considered. And then when we get to the end of this process, we can whittle things down. Lucy?
And Jeff, if I just may, on that last comment, again, I just want to encourage everybody, because sometimes some of this comes in regular dialogue and communication, so that we're not coming to the pinch point, in 2 or 3 months here, and everybody's dropping lists at that time, and we're in the middle of a process, so just frequent open communication is encouraged with everybody, I think, on a regular basis. So we're not all getting the information at one time, that's being updated and talked through.
And I want to remind everyone, we have lots of time to plan. I mean, we're well ahead of the game. So, but yeah, Johanny, anybody, if you have ideas, thoughts, I know we've all talked about, the East Reading pool site, not necessarily a pool, but something there. Other areas in the city that you feel could use improvements or new ideas completely out of the box for the administration to at least put on the list, and they may highlight the ones they feel are important, and we can come back and haggle through it a little bit down the stretch before we finalize a plan, because we don't want to use all that time to finalize the plan, but we have a decent amount of time, and I feel like we're ahead of the game.
I think Jamar had his hand up too, Jeff.
Go ahead, Jamar.
Thank you. Thank you. Linda, I believe last week sent out an updated schedule for the fall budget calendar. It included a date for the capital improvement committee planning meeting for the capital improvement budget. But what we can also cover there is allocation of Fund 47, the American Rescue Plan budget. Again, running it along with our budget process, the projects make it onto the list, they go through the thorough vetting process, we hold the public hearings, and then we're able to proceed forward from there.
Jamar, I think that's an excellent idea. And, I think now more than ever, hopefully people will come to the public hearings or tune in, because the use of these funds in alignment with the approval of the mayor's, budget as presented, we won't see this again. So I'm hoping that people really, a lot of times these hearings are not well attended. And I understand that it's not everybody's, cup of tea to sit and go through this, but it's never been more important, in my opinion, for people to be engaged. So thank you for that recommendation.
The other part I think that needs to be said that kind of hasn't directly is, as finance director, my principal focus is within the city's assets, its plant and physical assets, and its physical infrastructure. I have no way of knowing respectfully what the community wants or needs. That's why we used to be invited to the community meetings that councilors had, and then we could hear and we could take that feedback back. With the pandemic, we haven't had those meetings. So again, if councilors are holding community meetings, be it Zoom or in person, I can certainly avail myself to come to them and get a better understanding, and we can then include it in the budget.
And this would be a good time for me to thank the council members who have taken us up on our offer to meet regularly on a monthly basis, and happy to come to you. That's worked for several of you, and I greatly appreciate that. And the offer extends to everybody on council. We want to do this the right way. We want to do it transparently. We want to have as much communication with you as council members and members of the public to make this as easy a process as possible, and for the public's benefit as well.
Yep, and again, to the administration and the body, we have this on the agenda once or twice a month. We don't want to overdo it, but to make sure we're constantly discussing this, nobody's going to be surprised, by the time we get to our final stages of this thing. what's on the list, what might be considered questionable, how we figure out what we whittle down. You know, there's a little bit of chiseling down at the end, I'm sure, but not much. All right, any additional questions?
Yes, Jeff, Chauhani here. So based on the number, obviously this is on the agenda every week. So we have a running list based on some conversations that we have already had. I mean, obviously I know we have minutes, but like, is like all these items on a particular list and categorized?
They have been in 2 PowerPoint presentations, and I'm happy to forward it again to you. We have not had any updated requests since the last PowerPoint, but I'll be sure you get it once again.
All right, any additional questions?
I think Lucine had her hand up.
Jeff,
Yeah.
I have my hand up.
Go ahead.
So as far as the public input, I think Abe, you mentioned you have 2 locations in mind for possibly hosting those. Can you speak a little bit more as to what that might look like? Virtual components, multilingual opportunities. How are we really gonna, what are you thinking? What is the administration thinking in terms of getting people to come to the accessibility pieces of that, the other barriers that we've seen in the past?
Yes, the establishment has to be ADA compliant. I've reached out to 4 entities already. I have not heard back, so I don't want to mention who they are yet before having that confirmed. Must be ADA compliant. Yes, we will have a translator there present as well to provide any assistance in Spanish. So we have that covered, and I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to block off at least 2 hours. It could go a little longer, and that's fine. But the intent is there to share with the public what that list is and what the requests are. We're gonna hand out the dollar numbers as well, so everybody's clear as to what was being asked for and the rationale as well. We'll give a brief overview, synopsis of what the project is going to entail, with a public benefit also included in there, so people know that their tax dollars are being used appropriately.
Abe, I'd love to see the opportunity for people to ask questions and have them answered. So if they cannot attend in person, if they could submit those questions, if we can do that publicly, whether it's on a piece of our website, on a landing page. I don't know how social media could play into that, but opening it up for people to ask questions, even if they aren't in attendance, I think would be critical.
That is correct. Now, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here, folks. So what I'm about to say, I want you to just consider it because you threw out virtual. The variant is here, folks. If we find ourselves where it's not safe to do this in public, we will do it via Zoom, and we will maximize the opportunity as much as possible. And if we have to make that instead of 2 nights, 3 nights to accommodate feedback and interest, so be it. We've got 3 nights that are set aside the 3rd week of October to get this done.
All right, additional comments or questions, anyone?
Just last
Yes.
one. I'm
Hold on,
sorry.
Johanny, go ahead.
I think, Abe, with that recommendation of maybe even having one sole virtual component, you know, instead of no matter where we are with this, you know, whether we have hybrid meetings, in-person meetings, I think maybe just a purely virtual meeting might make sense too.
Very good.
Johanny?
Yeah, as it relates to the virtual meeting, I think as long as maybe, you know, as soon as we know, so we can start spreading the word, getting people registered, sending them reminders and things of the sort so that we can get as much input as possible. I think, you know, that's important. A second comment that I wanted to make was, you know, I would really like us to at some point get back to finance committee meetings, because as we are getting closer to budget discussion, we really haven't had, I think we only had maybe 1 update on finance. And we're already going into discussing the new year budget, but we haven't really seen a lot of the numbers for this year in terms of expenses and revenue. But we've seen very few of them, I should say.
I welcome the opportunity to present the information when council would like to see it on their agenda. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Marcia.
And I think as a follow-up to that, we don't have a finance committee per se that functions as a committee might. We do it as a committee of the whole. So it may be important, and of course it's too late for this year, but we make that a regular part of our agenda for our committee of the whole meetings if we're not going to have separate committee meetings, and that we schedule them whatever the body would like, whether it be once a month, which I think might be a little too much, or once every 6 weeks or whatever, so that people can see. So when we get to budget time, to understand where we are with revenue and expenditures. I think that's always helpful.
Additional questions or comments? Donna?
Yeah, I'm just going to, following up on the meeting, the type of meeting, I actually believe that virtual makes much more sense. I think it's, we have the chance of more people being involved. And again, we hope that this variant will go away, but now they're talking another variant coming forward. I think if we can do virtual, I think it makes the most sense. I think it's much more accessible to everyone. So that's just my opinion.
All right, additional questions or comments, anyone on this topic?
Jeff?
Yeah.
I just want to reinforce what Donna said. I've been participating in hybrid meetings, and they become very difficult to sustain a dialogue because the technology problems, and they're things that happen. I think it's a lot easier for the public to be able to participate virtually. It's going to be safer. Now, I think we need to, as we do with our regular meetings, provide a place for those that don't have access to technology to be able to come in and contribute. But I don't see us opening up a meeting to the public at this point. Things are not going in and that's not going to, it's change very quickly. We know it's not going in a good direction.
All right, any additional comments? All right, thank you, Ava and Jamar. Before we adjourn, I just want to see if there's anybody has anything else for public comment that we didn't touch upon, something pressing this evening that they feel we need to discuss.
Yes, if
Go
I
ahead,
may.
Johnny. Yep.
So I'm getting very concerned with like the amount I've seen abundance or in drug addicts on the streets doing stuff in public. It's like there's some activity happening late at night on Penn Street where like in the morning you see people's food displayed, people's 40s displayed, beer bottles, drug paraphernalia. So I'm getting very concerned with the abundance of people that are in the streets at night, like just up to no good. And I think it's important that we come up with a plan. And I don't know what that plan would look like, but it's just getting worse, like what's happening at night downtown. We see the results of it early morning. You know what I mean? So
and Johanny, I think you may be seeing some traffic too on your block that used to congregate elsewhere. That may or may not be true. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and it's a tough thing for for somebody completely controlled. But we'll defer to the administration.
And I've seen it all throughout. I mean, from like even behind the supermarket at Bravos, like drug users are feeling free to be just using drugs in the street, like doing crack in the street, like in public, or drinking a 40 in public. Like, I'm getting concerned that they feel so free to do so without any repercussion.
Marcia?
Yeah, I feel very compelled to respond because I know Johanny and I have discussed this. The understanding, it's people with substance use disorders, when they're under the influence, their brains are being affected, do not have the boundaries to make good decisions that you and I would be making. When your brain does not function, you can't make good choices. That being said, I know the police department has tools that they can do, but I think there does need to be more street outreach, more intervention, moving these folks into the places that they need to be, whether they cooperate. If not, they may need to be incarcerated, but I think that it needs to be a concerted effort. I know the police department has been going out doing outreach around our parks and our playgrounds that has been very successful. So maybe we need to apply this to any area in the city that we're seeing issues with, and certainly to make everyone feel clean and safe, because you don't feel that way when you're walking past people that are under the influence, who are being very disrespectful, where they're, throwing litter and trash around, sitting with their drug paraphernalia. And this is happening across the board in every city that I've been to recently, seen more and more of it happening. And we're going to have not be able to really promote the economic development of our city if we don't address this issue. So I hope we can move ahead with a plan. Again, I know the police department has some tools, but it's just a matter of making sure they move forward.
Johanny, would you be kind enough to forward me a list of those supermarkets where you saw this activity and some other hotspots that you've observed, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
I've been tempted to take pictures, but
No, don't.
I don't want to get attacked. So
No, you don't. No, be safe. Yeah.
All right, any additional issues? Go ahead, Donna.
Following up on Johanny's comments, I've noticed, and I'm not downtown as much as other folks are, but I can say probably out of the last 4 times I've been downtown, during the morning, I've seen people sleeping and or laying in open storefronts, the old hospital thrift shop. I guess one time I was passing through before the Chinese restaurant had opened, lying in the entrance there. And as someone who, and I'm going to ask this very bluntly, and I don't know that we have statistics we can immediately go to, but as someone who made the decision, a difficult decision to vote against it and the continuance of it, do we have statistics from before and after that talk about or that can give us some insight into if there are more issues now, like the kind that Johanny is pointing out as she is on Penn Street every day? Are there more now without DID than there were during the DID days? I know that Cindy's done a great job. I know downtown coordination has worked well, but this may be a part of it that has not worked. And I ran into someone who works at the County Services Center yesterday just by happenstance, who is now, has expressed to me her concerns about coming to any concerts downtown until the city can assure public safety. So I think all these things go together. Again, I did vote against it. Clearly, it was a difficult choice, but that was a choice I made. But I would like to know now, half a year on, 9 months on, what kind of statistics we're looking at in terms of, nuisance issues, trash litter, all those kind of things.
I will track those down.
Thank you.
Lucy?
I think, one of the questions I have for the administration, I've seen recently that there was at least one ambassador position posted. And I'm curious to know, when and what, would that ambassador be doing? Because I think that no matter if we look into the past or to the present moment, these issues are reoccurring, and the question is always the same. Who is responsible for taking care, of these areas? So it's not just litter. It's also wayfinding. It's also working with our populations that need help in various different areas. It's about having people available to escort. It's about, economic development. So again, I don't think, and I didn't think in the past, there's one entity that's responsible for any of this or one individual. But I'd like to see from the administration where they are in terms of their plan, since they have absorbed the responsibilities of, and how you really kind of have put these into categories, because Cindy is taking on certain aspects, the police are taking on certain aspects, we have other partnerships. So if we can see that, then maybe we can identify, hey, we're seeing an increase here, this is where we need more support. I'd like to hear that from the administration. And I don't think it's as much as we don't have them now. We used to have this. We need this in the future. I think we need to just ask where are our needs, who is currently responsible for that, and where are the gaps that we need to fill in with resources. Are they people? Are they funds? Whatever they are.
Sure. I have a meeting with Cindy scheduled for this week, and this sounds like a perfect topic for a committee of the whole meeting sometime this month. So I'd like to coordinate that with you with your permission.
All right, thank you. Any additional issues or comments or questions before we adjourn? Lucy?
Yes, I have one question for Public Works. I would like to know what their adapted or amended mowing schedule is for the 18th Ward regarding the island project, because it's looking a little hairy. And I know it's not just because of the construction, which is all positive, and also the rain, but I think we need to, I'd like that to just be reviewed with me, please.
Sure. Well, Stan just hopped on, so I think he can answer that.
Okay. Hi, Stan.
Stan, you're on mute.
I'm technologically challenged even through all my Cisco. Hi, Lucine, how are you? Could you please restate the question? My dog was barking at a passerby. I apologize.
Yes, Dan, no problem. It's nice to see you. So in the 18th Ward, specifically along the corridor of where we're seeing the construction for the pedestrian bike safety, the ramps, some paving, even in some various gateway areas, the vegetation is getting a little out of control. And I know that's typical for this time of year anyway in certain areas, especially where PennDOT is involved. So I wanted to know if there was an amended schedule or if there is the attention of Public Works to address some of these areas, if you've been seeing them and noting them.
Absolutely. And on a bright note, Gordon Mann came through, and we can have now 2 additional full-time people on the Public Works staff, and 1 person is going to be allocated full-time to the Parks Department for this specific type of work, and the second will be into the trash and recycling. Number 2. Getting back to your question in terms of the grass cutting, if you will, just something that simple, is especially after these past rainstorms, we've had some challenges, and even around the Public Works buildings, we haven't even cut those grasses, and they're well above your ankle, and yes, it's been a challenge. And right now with our team, our grass cutting team has been working a lot of overtime, and it's been hard on them as well, in terms of we've had people turning down overtime because it's just too much for them. But yes, we are addressing that, and I suspect by next week we'll be back on a full program again in terms of where we're going to be cutting grass. In terms of giving you a specific schedule, I can work with administration to develop something like that for you, because going back to our original parks as well, like 11th and Pike, we're still having issues keeping up there too. So yes, we will definitely do that, because it's been hard, and especially at Mineral Springs, we've had a few trees come down and then what we're doing then is picking up this week was picking up a lot of the limbs that were in the streets, and then we focused to some of the other areas too. We couldn't even walk through some of our corridors either, so we've been addressing that as well. And I can tell you what, they have been trying, and then they come in at 7, sometimes leave at 5, at 6. So yes, Lucine, we will be working on that.
Thanks, Dan. I wonder too, I know that when we have snow removal, we have to contract out and we bring people in. Is there ever a circumstance where we've considered doing that for situations like now, during the summertime or during the fall, to have third parties come in and help us where we need it?
In all deference, I believe we would probably have a union issue as well. Act 47 has severely limited to our manpower, and we, as Gordon has mentioned time and again, that we are on a cap. If we look at it as a salary cap in professional baseball, where we cannot exceed that, especially in certain divisions. I wish we could do that, but I would rather give our people the overtime as much as we can versus contract out. That was an emergency, this snow removal, where we, through that declaration, we just had to clean the streets, and we don't have the dump trucks nor the front end loaders to be able to perform services like that, especially as quickly as we needed. At one time, I believe we had, I guess was up to probably about 30 dump trucks running. And the sad part about it is we ran out of space on the second day, like at Schlegel pool. We didn't know where to dump the snow anymore, because the time you could dump the snow into the river, but because of MS4 standards and pollutant standards, we can't do that as well. So, and I hate to say, please be patient, but we will do the best we can. I sincerely, I agree, because around my neighborhood too, where I live, and we have the same issues. But thank you.
Thank you, Stan.
My pleasure, Lucine.
Okay, go ahead, Marcia.
Okay, and I know how challenging this last week has been, but I just wanted to commend Public Works. I noted before I was out of town for a week, and before I left, Hill Road was pretty atrocious, and we always know there's a problem there because all the runoff, the trees, whatever. It was immaculate this past weekend. So I know you folks must have been out there doing some major cleaning, or else it wouldn't have been like that. And that really helps with the runoff, because everything blocks the storm sewers when it's not cleaned out. So kudos to the folks that worked on that project.
There is a good team at Public Works. Is our first level foreman and our employees, the actual laborers, along with Kyle and his team, and Steve and his team, and especially Bob Gensmer's and the sewer teams. They started their preparations on Monday, and we actually talked to the previous Friday in terms of what we could do. And so there'll be a plan in place for us to move forward, because we have some very good people who I commend immensely, and I know administration believes the same thing, especially what we've gone through.
All right, any additional comments or questions this evening? Okay, if not, we are adjourned. Everyone have a safe evening.
Thank you, likewise.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night. Good night,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
I can do that too.